Now, how many of you didn't get a new car for Christmas? Raise your hand. We have some new cars that we gave out last week. They're in the parking lot, and the keys are actually in there, and so if you're spiritual enough, you'll be able to see the key. Yeah. All right, very quickly, what does this mean, these stones? So for those of you who were here last week, you were to contemplate and meditate upon what your word for the year was going to be. So for those of you who are just now acquiring your stones, I asked the same meditative process for you. You don't need to know it right now, but at some point during this morning's lesson, I want you to just consider what that word, that empowerment word, that visionary word for you represents for this coming year. So living affirmatively. Living affirmatively is available to all of us. It is the essential part of this teaching. How many of you have ever been had stages in your life where you did not live affirmatively? So this coat represents that stage in my life where I did not live affirmatively. So somebody do the math. 1982, from this year. 35 years. So 35 years ago today, I arrived in New York City on a bus with two duffel bags, actually, of all of my possessions. And I had a little ski jacket, and I was freezing. And so I found where I was living, and I rented a room in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, from an 86-year-old Norwegian lady who didn't speak very good English, but it was enough for me to rent that room. And I made my way to a used store in Greenwich Village where I got this Harris tweed 1940s overcoat. Now, it looks really great, but it has no lining, whatsoever. But it was better than what I had. And so I would wear this coat. And I didn't have a lot of money. In fact, I had very little money. And I was going to temp agencies. I knew how to scrape and paint walls. I was doing everything that I could in order to live in New York City and start my acting career. And about 3 weeks into the process, after I had my Harris tweed 1940s coat, I was very hungry, and I didn't have any money. And I went into a Gristedes supermarket on the Upper West Side. I think it was in the 90s off of Broadway. You ready? Confession? I stole cheese in this coat. Ty calls this my cheese coat. And because it's got really big pockets. And I nibbled on that cheese like a little mouse for several days until I knew I was going to get a check from a temp agency. And my Assemblies of God background guilt took over after a while. And instead of going back into Gristedes and just facing the manager, I did send the money in an envelope and a check. But I think about the mindset of that person who stole cheese in this coat 35 years ago today. And I think about what evolution means and how one goes from one state of consciousness or belief or mindset to another. And you realize that that's what everyone is doing here, correct? We are moving. We have a natural, innate desire to better ourselves. That means different things specifically for all of us because we are all individuals and we all have varying personalities. But there isn't one person in here who doesn't want to move or advance to some higher quality of life. Now, that's a beautiful thing if we understand all of the barriers that we have created. We have created. Because you see, fundamental to this teaching is that the barriers are self-created. And the evolution in and of itself is a natural process. And that everything that you and I crave, or everything that assists us in what we call spiraling up into our awareness, is also readily available around us. When Reverend Avon read the call and response, she said, "Do not seek for love because you are love." The mistake, then, is the fact that we think that that which we desire and that which we long for and that which we need is separate from us. So the great lesson, the ongoing lesson of being in human form is not to learn anything, but to remove all of the barriers that exist, that are self-created, self-imposed, that prevent us from understanding that all that we need is here. And why do we say that? Because we talk about the fact that we're not separate from that which is intelligence or God or source, but that we are absorbed in that. So that means that everything that you need, you have. That means that everything that you crave to be and long for, the creativity that sparks and churns and bubbles up inside of you, that's there for a reason, because it matches your individual persona and reason and purpose for expression. So those of you who have an artistic creativity, you get to look at the self-imposed barriers that are there that tell you you can't make a living from that, or that you can't survive from that. You look at your creative expression around your gift and your passion for numbers, and you realize that you being a CPA, or you being a math teacher, or you being somebody who's an architect who has to rely on all of those mathematical equations, those things serve a purpose for you, and that's where you get to serve into the world. But everybody has that. And there isn't one level that's higher or better than the other, that there is a congruency or a thing that blends and molds together that brings us to that. And so when we enter into this experience, then it's like a metamorphosis, and that's today's topic. Do you understand metamorphosis? Particularly around bugs, insects, right? That's usually when we talk about metamorphosis, is that an insect begins its life as an egg. And then that egg expands into larva. And then that larva expands into the chrysalis, or the pupa, where it kind of seems to have no movement whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, boom, it spreads into adulthood, or expression. And you and I have a metamorphosis. We are created from a divine idea. We are created from the physical fertilization. But when you think about life, life then is a metamorphosis. And we have 4 stages that you and I go through. So I asked you, do you want to advance? Do you want to expand? Do you want to grow? How do you do that? What's the first thing that has to happen? So what was your word last week, or those who are just getting your stone today? What was your word? Got it down. All right. What's going to have to transpire for there to be a metamorphosis within you regarding that word? The first thing is there's going to have to be an inception. Inception, that's the first word of the day. Inception, which means beginning. You're going to have to look at that word, and whatever your relationship with that word has been prior to this year is going to have to be set aside. So, for example, my word is focus. And I really want to get a greater clarity and streamlined with regards to what is important to me. And I realize that I live in a world, like you do, of social media and distraction and noise and people's needs and this thing and this dynamic and this dynamic. And what I realize is I'm like that sort of silly putty man that gets pulled in all different directions. And sometimes because of that particular experience, I lose focus. And the things that I say that I want to do get shelved. And I create a belief in my head that I can't get to them because this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. The reality is that I've simply allowed myself to lose focus. And so if your word is harmony, or if your word is joy, or if your word is health, whatever it is, you have to look at what your relationship is currently with that word and allow yourself to approach that with beginner's mind. Does that make sense? If I bring my history to it, then I'm just going to repeat it. In fact, I found this great quote. It said, "Many people look forward to the new year or a new start because they bring to that new start their old habits." So it's just a recycle, right? Isn't that what our resolutions have been all along? But we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about paradigm shifting here. We're talking about understanding that you and I no longer have the luxury to just wish for something better. Because when you know better, you have the opportunity to do better. It doesn't necessarily that you do it, but you have to understand the responsibility of that is there for me. And so the inception then with your word is a new beginning. A new beginning. Not the way that you did it before, but a new beginning. And so a new beginning requires something of each and every one of us, doesn't it? It requires us to be able to look at what is my thought process. You know, do I still hold on to the idea that I need to steal cheese? It isn't so much the act of stealing the cheese as it is what's behind that act. There's not enough. Now here's the amazing thing. That belief or that experience doesn't fully go away. It's just that the relationship with that changes. So here's what we need to know, and this is what's fundamental, and this is where I really need you to pay attention, is that you are governed by your subconscious mind. Do you understand that? You are governed, you are led, you are ruled by your subconscious mind, not by your mother-in-law. You are led by you are governed by your subconscious mind. It isn't anybody else. It isn't anyone else restricting you or holding you back. So what does that mean? Let's break it down because it's very important, okay? And I really want you to understand this. So you are made up of consciousness. Hello, good morning. You want to hear something funny? We have an alarm system company with the building, and so whenever like the power goes out, it trips the thing, and the automated thing calls in and goes, "Good morning, there's a power outage at Slaka." So all this time you've been attending Slaka. So you are governed by, you are ruled by your subconscious mind, okay? So you and I are vessels of consciousness. Consciousness, what does that mean? Awareness, thought. That the activity of thought takes place in mind, not your brain. Your brain is the organ by which mind is used, okay? So you are consciousness in form. And the way your form manipulates and maneuvers and works in the world is through your relationship with your thought. Now your thought is influenced by both conscious and subconscious thinking. Conscious thinking, then, is everything that happens on the surface. So every day you are making you're having thoughts and you're using those thoughts and you're making decisions based upon outside stimulus, right? The things that you smell, the things that you hear, the things that you read and see. But that's all above the water. That's surface thinking and surface choosing. What about all the times when you're sort of absent-minded or just kind of checked out, but you're still thinking, right? You're still choosing. That's being governed by the subconscious. And so in our day-to-day activity when we're thinking and we tell you to be mindful, what does that mean? It means that when you catch yourself thinking, I don't have enough, I need to go steal some cheese, that you have an option. And what is that option? To understand and know and to look around and say, there is more than enough, and I'm open and available to be able to see that. I'm open and available to be grateful for the things that I do have, rather than spiraling into panic, right? And thinking that there isn't enough. Because if you continue to think that there isn't enough via the subconscious, then what does that do energetically? It just creates, perpetuates a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so the trick is, the mastery is that the moment that you have the thought that isn't of the highest and best for you, that's the moment where you replace it. And that's what being mindful is. But see, if you don't know that, or if you just operate by default and you just live life the way that a lot of people on our planet live, then you are governed by your subconscious, which defaults to an idea of what the rest of race consciousness or mass consciousness is thinking. So mass consciousness then could be thinking that there's not enough, that the world is spiraling downward. Mindful thinking could be, you can have whatever it is that you choose to have. During the Depression in the United States, there were more millionaires that were made during that time than in any other time in U.S. history. But you don't really hear about that, because what you hear is that mass consciousness said, we are in this state. But there must have been individuals who said, I refuse to accept that. And by my refusing to accept that and focusing on the fact that there must be more than enough, then I change my experience. So with your word, then, it's the same thing. You can go through the act of, it's a new year, so I have to pick a new word and I have to do this thing. But if you don't change the inception and the relationship that you have with that word, and understand that subconsciously there may be stuff in there that tells you you're not enough, then you will just fall back into the same habit. So on New Year's Day, I was with some dear friends and we were doing some deep work and some meditative work. And an awareness came to me. Because we were dialoguing about some of our frustrations and the things that did work and that didn't work, and I just blurted out and I said, most of my life I've been a lone ranger. Most of my life I've been this lone ranger person who just felt as though in order for me to do what it is that I needed to do, I had to embark and go out on my own. I was the odd person out in my family. I didn't think the way that the rest of them thought. I moved myself into isolated territory. I did all of these things. And so in that idea of being like the Lone Ranger, I realized that in that thought process, that every time I did hunger for connection, I would find it, but it would be temporary. Because the thought of being the Lone Ranger would do what with the connection? It would come in and it would find a way to dismantle it or make it wrong. Does that make sense? And so someone at that table pointed out to me, David, you realize why you had that. And I said, tell me. Because that was a safety. That was a choice for safety. Because you didn't feel safe in your environment. It wasn't a safe environment. And so the Lone Ranger thing was something to latch onto in order to feel safe. But you see, as I adulted and grew up, I didn't change the idea subconsciously always that everything was safe. And so the Lone Ranger patterning then would continue. And it didn't matter how talented or how connected or how, in sync it felt. Eventually that would dissolve because that idea of safety was still not addressed. Where is that idea? I keep doing this, but where is it? Right above my belly button, right? It's in the subconscious. So my point is that it doesn't matter how much spiritual work that you do. There will always be deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper layers within the subconscious that come up for you and I to look at that. The point is that the pathway of self-awareness never ends. You and I never arrive fully at all of the lessons that are here to learn. So with your word then, what's the thing that keeps repeating and showing up for you and getting in the way? Fear, shame, independence? What's the thing that keeps showing up, the repetitive pattern that keeps showing up? Because that is connected to a belief inside of your subconscious. There are those in this room who attack before they can be attacked. And what's that linked to? Safety. You see, we want to push all of the responsibility of all of this stuff onto, I just didn't connect to them. Everywhere I turn, I put all my energy into this and people just flake on me. And you see, we're always trying to make the outward responsible rather than looking at the situation itself and going, what is it within my subconscious that continues to magnetize this repetitive thing to me? Because writing the word on the stone isn't enough. To sit down in a meditative state, to dialogue with those people who are just as hungry for evolution and metamorphosis as you are. Otherwise, we just continue to be in this embryonic state and we never fully mature and move into adulthood or form. So I'm asking you, what are you going to do differently? What are you going to do to look at from a self-examination to go, if I let everybody else off the hook, what am I left with? What am I left with in terms of responsibility for my evolution? It's me. Do you get the freedom in that? Because right now, a lot of us are not experiencing freedom because we are wanting to put that well-being onto agencies outside of ourselves, rather than the mental agency of consciousness. And it doesn't matter how advanced we are, I'm sitting there and going, holy crap, I'm still holding this idea that I'm not safe within my subconscious. And so what does that do? It brings to me very colorful characters who outpicture how unsafe I am. Why, here comes a psychotic right now. And I just go, wow, ministry's hard. And it isn't that ministry's hard. It's that I'm carrying around a very old idea that I'm still not safe. And so, if my word is focus, then I have to look at this idea of inception and beginning and go, everything supports me in my focus. So me rather trying to battle outside overstimulus, really focus can be a pleasurable thing for me to simply learn to say, this is what I want to put my attention to. Rather than, ooh, I got to do battle with social media. Ooh, I got to do battle with these psychotics. Ooh, I got to do battle with this. Because I got to protect my focus. Love is all around me. Focus is all around me. Peace is all around me. Awareness is all around me. You know, we must become very, very careful about the way in which we teach and speak. And become hyper conscious of the fact how, without even realizing it, we keep putting the power out onto something out there. So the inception is the beginning of the idea. What is your fresh idea? What is your beginning idea? Because that's the launching pad of your metamorphosis. The next one from inception then is the conception or the fertilization of that idea. That's your first action. If you truly understand that you are only capable of doing and honoring your dreams and your passions to the degree that you are physically well, and so you've decided that wellness is going to be something that you're really going to embrace in this new year, the idea or the desire for wellness then is the inception, but the conception or the fertilization of that is the action that you take. That's the picking up the phone. That's the going up and swallowing your pride and going to the yoga center and signing up and taking a class even though you can't bend for nothing. That's clearing out the refrigerator. It's becoming very, very mindful of reading labels. It's understanding about time management and the fact, and I speak for myself, is I bought all this Tupperware because I'm going to, bring my own food, carry my own food. And then in creating the management, the Tupperware's still there. But the action is I got to fill it. And I got to stick to that. And I got to stop sitting down and working, in the morning and then suddenly looking up and it's 2 in the afternoon and I haven't eaten. I've become more mindful about that. So my inception has to be followed by the conception or the fertilization of that idea, and there has to be commitment to that. You have to be careful with that fertilization and that action. Oh, I can't do this because of my job. Oh, I can't do this because of my family. Oh, I can't do this because of my living situation. Oh, I can't do... Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It isn't until it becomes meaningful enough. And this is the thing, that when conception then moves into gestation. Do you see all these TIONs I'm using? It's very cool. It's that I start to eat well, or I start to change my relationship with focus, or I actually do, if my word is joy, examine who I'm hanging out with and decide that I don't want to hang out with certain people. And when I start to let certain people go, that gestation period, when I start to eat better, that gestation period, when I become more focused, that gestation period of wanting to go back to the old habit, that's the interesting time. That's the seed going into the soil. That's the conception and the action finally going, all right, here's the seed. I'm going to put the seed in the soil. I'm going to start right now the way I change. I'm going to do this with the people that I hang out with. I'm going to put this into the soil. But the amazing thing about the soil is the next day we've dug the seed back up and go, in the gestation period, that's it. That's where most of us fail. You know, they say when you first plant bamboo, you know this about bamboo, right? You don't see nothing. And then it's like maybe 3 years, 3 to 4 to 5 years in a gestation period where you see nothing, and then all of a sudden it just takes over. And that's sort of like what your relationship with your word is. You have to understand that if I or you have been living in a particular set of habits and patterns up until this point in time, that I'm not going to go to sleep and someone's going to kiss me on the forehead and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be completely different. It means that the process is going to be dependent upon my relationship with that gestation period. You realize that that's what faith is. Where did the idea of faith come from? Who was the first wise teacher, philosopher, or sage to ever talk about the instrumentation and the pathway and the metamorphosis that occurs through faith? When did the species of human beings finally learn or become cognizant of the fact that when the sun went down, that it would come back again? There had to be a learning period. There has to be a period for you where you understand that when you let something go, when you put that seed into the soil and you and I stop micromanaging it, or we allow our subconscious mind to not sabotage that thing, that it will grow. It will do its thing. Why? Because that is this thing called law. Law of physics, law of spirituality, law of nature tells us that for every cause there is an effect. This isn't bumper sticker, pie in the sky folk tales. It's a fundamental basis of all creation. So if the seed of your word is put into the gestation and you begin to honor that particular process, what do you do with the seed in the soil? You have to nurture it. You have to be faith-filled. You have to understand that within the seed, within the acorn is the oak tree. How do you get that? How do you understand that the word that you write on the stone, the thing is already in that? How do you understand and comprehend the power of what it is that is contained within your consciousness when you know how to use and directly understand your relationship with conscious and subconscious mind? Because when we become in right relationship with that, then the inception into the conception into the gestation becomes the realization or the form. No exception. No exception. Nothing with regards to trends or fads or eras or time or people. Somehow, some way, whoever those millionaires were during the time of the Depression somehow understood this process. I don't have to be locked down into what the rest of the people are experiencing. I don't have to be a prisoner of global fear. I don't have to be a prisoner of my own family's fear. I don't have to be a prisoner to my own family's geneticism. Because I understand that in the power of my own mind, I have the ability to create my quality of life. So in the science of mind, our founder Ernest Holmes said, if you know that the power with which you are dealing is a principle and not a personality, if you know and believe that the mind, your mind, is the only actor, it is cause, it is effect, it is substance, it is intelligence, it's truth, it's power. If you know that that which is in your mind is all that there is, and if you have a real embodiment of your desire, your white stone, then you can demonstrate. You can bring things into realization. If you lack, if you are poor, if you are without friends, if you are without opportunity, don't fight anything, but be sure to erase from your consciousness any sense of that lack. What does that mean? How are you going to know what to erase? But how are you going to know what those are? By looking and examining your life. What keeps happening to you? What is it that you throw your hands up and go, oh my God, this always happens to me? Bingo. What are those things? You know, and so that is your entry point into what's going on in your subconscious mind. You know, you don't wake up every morning and go, I don't have any friends because I'm a loathsome, worthless pig. You don't do that. But there's some semblance of thought within our subconscious mind that says, I don't deserve. That's a very active seed that is gestating and has been in the subconscious mind. Now, it's not good or bad, right or wrong. But wow, where'd you pick that up? What commercial did you watch that said you have to look like that in order to get love? What 6-second moment did you overhear from a parent or a teacher or a person that said, this is what you are, and that's actually a product of their opinion, but you held on to that. You put that seed in. And so even though you don't realize that that is there, it's leading, it's governing you. It takes over. You haven't done anything wrong. You've just allowed consciousness, thought process, to be unguided. To become mindful means that I go, wow, okay, I have like all of these stallions and these horses that I have to sort of corral and direct. I have this energy of thought that I get to direct. And as I begin to direct these things, it ultimately changes the quality of my life. But you see, you and I have to care enough to want the metamorphosis. And that's really the thing. Ernest goes on to say, we walk by falling forward. Water falls by its own weight. The planets are eternally falling through space, for everything sustains itself in nature. The only reason that you and I are limited is that we have not allowed the instinctive life to come out through us for reasons that we have gathered that we don't deserve. What will it be in order for you and I to get to a place where the allegiance within our subconscious that says that we don't deserve is boring? When will the scales tip where our desire to take back that power will be so palpable that we don't let any other old excuse stand in the way? When will we be excited and enthused enough about talking about our victories as enthused as we are about talking about who we hate and what we hate and why we hate them? Do you ever see that character on Saturday Night Live, Debbie Downer? And people are having a conversation about something and they're all excited, and then she goes, statistics show that by doing that, you're going to fall into the abyss of blah, blah, blah. And then the music goes, wah, wah, wah. There's a lot of Debbie Downer action going on amongst some of you. Some of you are giving unsolicited advice. No one asked you. And yet on Facebook you're saying, well, I hate that. No one asked you. And what part of your subconscious is feeling as if you're able to get a little bit of control back by being a Debbie Downer? Do you see that? So the real opportunity here is, how do I fall in love with self? You ever been in love? I mean, you know, that like first love kind of thing where you don't eat, can't think. It's just like, wow. I mean, that just raw, vulnerable love. When was the last time you allowed that level of passion to be directed towards you? That you actually stopped and you looked and you went, what is the origin of all of this? The inception and the conception that came together to create me. And you start to love on self so much that you consciously revere the gestation period and care for it just as you would care for a loving animal or a newborn. That you take your idea or you take your word of the year and you love it because it represents the deepest desire of your heart. You see, one of the key motivations for wanting to move into a different arena is for us to look at our process and to call ourselves out on our inability to move into realization fully. We've often channeled and put that responsibility on the oddball. Oh, this person did it, but they were odd. This person achieved this level of mastery, but man, don't even try to talk to him. Why save it for the oddity when the masses can begin to wake up into a level of empowerment and own and channel and revere the metamorphosis that is here? I will tell you, it takes work, but it isn't arduous work. It can become thrilling work when you learn that what you are doing it and why you are doing it is because you are so madly in love with self. There is nothing that you are holding on to right now that is greater than your ability to change your mind. There is no legacy within you that is more restrictive or more overpowering than your ability to set your own self free. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to do it. And so I invite you this year to say yes to that. Would you just close your eyes for a moment and breathe deeply with me? Recall whatever it is that your word was from last week. If you are just choosing a word for this year, I invite you to bring it to the forefront of your mind. And I just want you to see it in front of you, blazing as if it's on a billboard or a neon sign. And I want you to think about the word inception. Inception means beginning, new beginning. What is your new beginning with that word? The conception, the action. What are the first steps, the incremental steps that you begin to take? The gestation is the soil. You're taking that word now and you're planting it. But you're planting it in full faith, knowing that it has already come to fruition because it already exists. It isn't dependent upon anything out there because it's already here. But what is your feeling around it? What is your feeling around the mastery of that particular word? How does it feel to know that the stale excuses of why you couldn't are gone? How does it feel to know that you are the perfect carrier, the perfect person to implement the meaning and the thought and the groundedness and the fullness of that word? How does it feel to know that this is so natural for you? The universe waits for a higher degree of allowing. Simply meaning that when our resistance to the idea or the desire lowers and the allowance of that idea raises, that the moment that the allowing becomes far more prevalent than the resistance, then it's as if worlds rush in and manifestation comes in ways expected and unexpected, in ways that you and I couldn't even articulate. And so in your gestation times, and there will be many, how will you sustain your knowing? How will you become congruent with an already having received attitude? How will you become mindful of that which is in your subconscious that might want to rise to the surface and sabotage your idea? And then instead of being fearful of that, just go, oh, okay, I notice you. We are not here to do battle with internal demons. We are here to reveal the power that is inside of us. So I declare that in this new year of 2018, that we become responsible for the meaning. We become responsible for the manifestation. We become responsible for the realization. From inception to form. The complete and total metamorphosis of all that is God. Draw your attention back to the Word. See it now. See it in form somehow. Feel the feeling of the achievement of that desire. And try to sustain it just for a few seconds. And in an act of solidarity, very gently reach over and grab the hand of the person next to you. Feel the energy of that being. Feel the power that is possible within that being. And from that pure place within your heart, I want you to affirm for them that you understand, that you support, and that you know for them that that word brings forth a divine realization. And the way that you let them know that is simply gently squeezing that hand. Breathe deep. And let us know it all together by saying, and so it is.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, And another, even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe. And that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.